Hello guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video we are going to learn how to cut a princess dart bustier. So if this is something you like to learn, kindly watch this video to the end and subscribe to my channel. Give this video a thumbs up and like. So this is my fabric and the line here is going to be my starting point, and the length of the fabric I'm using is 19 inches. So I'm marking from the shoulder to the bust point, which is 11 inches. And the next thing I'm going to do now is to, so I forgot to mention, to know how much fabric you need to fold, all you need to do is to use the biggest part of your body measurement. Since this is a half length, the biggest part of the person I'm working with is our bust. So you need to add the dart intake, your seam allowance, you need to add it to the quarter of the bust to determine how much fabric you need to fold. Okay, so yeah, so now I'm remarking the bust point line. So the next thing I'm going to mark is the shoulder to the under bust, which is 16 inches. Okay, shoulder to under bust 16 inches. So I'm just marking the under bust line, and the next thing is to mark the half length. Okay, our under bust is quite close to our half length. Okay, that's how our measurement is. So a half length is 17 and a half, and I added extra 1.5 inches to the half length. This is because we are cutting a princess dart bustier. Okay, so you need to add extra inches to the front so that by the time you are stitching the front and back together, the front is not going to be shorter than the back. All right, so right now I'm going to determine the nipple to nipple measurement, and because I'm cutting directly on the fabric, I'm going to be adding half an inch to half of our nipple to nipple measurement, which half of our nipple to nipple measurement is 4 inches. I added half an inch to it, so I'm marking 4.5. Okay, so I'm going to be marking the 4.5 up to the half length of this fabric. So when that is done, so I went ahead to mark the chest line of 8.5. I'm so sorry, I was all over the place. So I went ahead to mark 8.5 for the chest line. Okay, and from there I measured a shoulder to shoulder measurement, which half of it is 7.5, and I'm going to be stopping at the chest line. So I'm just ruling the chest line mark up. So the next thing is to connect my darts together. So after that, I'm going to be taking 1 inch for the shoulder slope and 3 inches for the neck width. Okay, I'll still go in more a little, I want to create the shoulder slope. So once that is done, I'm going to create the neck depth for the front neck, and I'm using 5 inches for the neck depth, and the neck width I'm using 3.5 inches. So I'm coming in again by half an inch, and then I'm just going to connect the neck together. So this is what I have after connecting the neck together. I'm just trying to make it more visible. So I'm going to determine the center of the armhole, and from the center I will also I will go in by half an inch, just like I did now, and then connect to the armhole area, to the chest line. I'm just using my armhole curve to connect to the chest line. So this is what you should have once you do yours as well. So the next thing is to come down 1 inch from this center point here now. Okay, I'll be coming down by 1 inch. Now it totally depends on you. You can decide to come down, you can decide to take 1 inch on both sides of the center line, or you take half an inch on both sides of the center line, but I just want to come down 1 inch from that center line, and I'll connect it to the dart leg. Now to determine the cup you will have on both sides of your dart leg, all you need to do is to minus your round under bust from your round bust. So the round bust I'm working with is 40 and the round under bust is 34. So when I remove 34 from 40, I will be left with 6 inches. Now the 6 inches, you are going to divide it by 2, and whatever you have is going to be your cup measurement. So the measurements I have here, after I divided the 6 divided by 2, I have 3 inches. So the 3 inches, I'm going to be taking 1 inch on this side that falls to the center side and 2 inches on the other side that falls to the side seam. So it totally depends on you. You can take 1 inch, half an inch on the side where I took 1 inch, and take 2 inches, 2.5 inches on the other side. Okay, so it depends on you, but it's always good you take 1 inch on this side and then you take 2 inches on the other side. So right now I have 3 inches, so I'll come down by 1 inch and also go up by 1 inch from the bust point, and then I'm going to be connecting the cups together on both sides of the dart. So you should have something like this once you are done, and make sure you blend all the sharp edges around there. So from that 1 inch that I came down from the center point of the armhole, I will connect down to the bust point there, just like I'm doing right now. Remember, I came up by 1 inch from the bust point, so you are going to connect it from the armhole to that bust point, and this is what you are going to have once you are done. And then you also come up there and then connect to the bust point as well. So you should have something like this once you are done. Okay, you have something like this once you are done. So from the armhole area, what I'm going to do now is to extend this particular leg by 2 inches. Okay, because by the time you cut it out and you are joining, if you don't add extra 2 inches to it, you might be short of fabric around there. Okay, and you don't want to be short of fabric, you are going to add it back. Now there is an important thing here. At the armhole area, whatever that intake you take away from the armhole area, you need to add it back to your armhole length. Okay, the quarter of our bust is 10 inches, so the 1 inch I'm cutting off from the armhole area, I'm going to be adding it back. Okay, the same thing for the dart intake that is off around there, you add it back there. Because I also cut this directly on the fabric, you also need half an inch on both sides of this dart to join them together. That makes it 1 inch. You are also going to add it to the length of your armhole, and after you've added that, you will now go ahead and also add your side seam allowance. You can see I'm trying to measure the armhole. So what that means, if you don't add all the things you'll be taking away from that dart intake, your armhole is going to be very short. Okay, so all the allowances we are taking away from here, you need to add it back to the measurement you have at your armhole area. Also the dart intake, that is the joining allowance you'll be using to join both sides of the dart together, you also need to add it back here, and also add your side seam allowance there, because if you don't do that, you'll be short of fabric. So I'm going to measure the quarter of the waist here now, and the quarter of the waist is about 8.5. You are going to be adding the 3 inches dart intake we are taking away from there, and you also need half an inch on both sides of the dart to join the dart together. That makes it 4 inches, and then you add 2 inches for joining allowance. That's 6 inches. So you add 6 inches to the quarter of your under bust measurement. I'm also going to repeat the same process for the waist measurement. Your dart intake plus the joining allowance for the dart, and also the seam allowance for the side, and then you add everything together. So I'll go ahead now and mark all of these points together, just like I'm doing right now. So you know, I also said that the length of this fabric, okay, you also need to add 1.5 inch to the length of your half length, which I've already done from the beginning. Okay, if you don't add 1.5 inch to your length, you will be very short of fabric. Your front bodies will be shorter than the back. So I've gone ahead now to connect that armhole back to all of the measurements I have there, and I'm adding half an inch for shoulder joining allowance. All right, I'm also going to be adding half an inch to the neck area, because I'm going to be cutting a lining for this pattern. So this is everything about this princess that bustier. I'll just go ahead now and cut this out. Remember, I said the lower part here you need to add extra 1.5 inch to it. Whenever you are cutting a princess that bustier, you must add extra 1 to 2 inches to the length of your half length. Okay, so once you are now done joining the front and back together, if you have excess at the front, then you can now use the back to cut it out. Thank you guys for watching this video to the end, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.